A man of deep principle and great idealism, Gordon Brown has led the tributes to the former Labour leader Michael Foot, who's died at the age of 96. Our political correspondent Joey Jones reports.
The tough fact is that in 1983 Michael Foot led his party into the abyss. But though his tenure as Labour leader was nothing short of disastrous, the rancour of those days has long faded. Today, memories were of a man principled, cultured and kind, a man who was bigger than a single electoral failure.
Michael Foot was a great unifier. He was a man of great passion. He firmly believed in the principles of the National Health Service. He fought very hard for peace and disarmament. He wrote brilliantly and eloquently about the need for social justice. And I think he is held in deep respect for the conviction with which he put his views both in print and in his speeches.
Appropriately for a fabled parliamentarian, news of Michael Foot's death was relayed in the House of Commons after Prime Minister's questions.
I'm sure that this news will be received with great sadness, not only in my own party, but across the country as a whole.
It is in Labour circles that memories of Michael Foot are strongest, but tributes have come from across the political spectrum.
He was a remarkable man, and in many ways the sort of almost the last link to a more heroic age in politics. You think of him in the 1930s fighting fascism and Hitler alongside Winston Churchill and the great giants of that age. And I also very much admired his great defence of our parliamentary democracy and the House of Commons, which he absolutely loved.
The Right Honourable Lady has sought to conduct the affairs of this country.
Michael Foot never went with the grain. At the last, he refused a seat in the House of Lords. In the early days, he had fought attempts to draft him into the cabinet, though he did in the end serve under Wilson and Callaghan. Michael Foot's ascendance to the party leadership at the age of 67 seemed improbable even at the time. It came about because he was the only man acceptable to both warring factions of his party.
Those of you who've been shouting Dennis down, you're playing the Tory game. Don't you understand that?
Unity was his goal. It proved to be unattainable.
I don't want to fight anybody in our own party, I repeat, to all of them. As I've said before this conference and as I say after this conference, I want them all to stay in our ranks to help us.
But the party split, and the newly formed SDP briefly threatened to capitalise on Labour disarray. Michael Foot was heroically ill-suited to leading a party in the modern media age. The donkey jacket moment at the Cenotaph in 1981 was one sartorial low point among many.
It is an injustice if that's what people remember him most for. And I mean, I've heard him talk about it many, many times. And he say, "Well, it wasn't a donkey jacket," and I said, "Michael, it's don't go there. There's no point. It's sort of Look, there's so much that you can say about Michael Foot."
And yet, of course, at the election, the Tory machine simply blew ramshackle Labour away, and Foot handed over to a new generation.
What I inherited in 1983 was a party that was demoralised and defeated, but not doomed. And it did mean that since I knew what the task of total change had to be, I got on with it with Michael's very firm, incomparable support.
Don't forget, it was the chaos of the early 80s that steeled men like Tony Blair, Gordon Brown and Peter Mandelson to forge a new direction for the party. And while not exactly new Labour material, Michael Foot nevertheless rejoiced in successive Blair victories. The Michael Foot years were an historic low for Labour, but most now blame the party for the feuds and infighting and not the leader. After all, Michael Foot was, as one commentator put it, a good man, fallen among politicians. Joey Jones, Sky News.